I will defend her. Elliot's voice tore through the courtroom, stopping every whisper cold. Reporters froze. Lawyers blinked. Even the judge lowered her gavel midair. A janitor, still holding his dripping mop, had just stepped between a billionaire and the legal machine intent on destroying her. No one knew it yet, but that single sentence was about to expose a secret powerful enough to shake corporate America. The mop's wooden handle was still warm in Elliot Warren's grip when the courtroom shifted from noise to absolute silence. Reporters froze mid-typing. Lawyers stopped whispering. Even the judge paused with her gavel raised. A billionaire sat abandoned at the defense table, and a janitor stood in the aisle like he'd crossed into the wrong world. Just an hour earlier, Elliot had been cleaning the third-floor hallway. Same routine he followed every morning. Same uniform with his name stitched over the chest. Same tired coffee he sipped to stay awake. 15 years of arriving before sunrise. 15 years of wiping down benches, scrubbing floors, and pushing a heavy cart through corridors lined with portraits of people who never knew he existed. Home was a cramped room above a laundromat in Queens. One bed, one stove, one flickering lamp. On his wall hung 2 photos. His wife, Sarah, smiling in a borrowed wedding dress, and his daughter, Mia, perched on his shoulders at age 5. Now she was 20 and in college, always telling him not to send money. He still did, quietly, whenever he could spare a few dollars. Nothing about Elliot's life suggested he belonged in a courtroom filled with billion-dollar lawsuits. But he cleaned the floors here, and that was enough to make him invisible. Most people never noticed him at all. By 9 a.m., courtroom 302 was packed. Reporters crowded the back row. Lawyers adjusted their collars and pretended they weren't nervous. Security barked orders. The air buzzed with tension. Elliot had been told to clean the courtroom extra well that morning. VIP day. That usually meant more pressure, more eyes, more chances for someone to shout at him. He kept his head down and worked faster. Then he saw her. Ariana Lockhart sat alone at the defense table. Her suit was flawless, her posture perfect, her expression controlled. But from where Elliot stood, he saw the truth beneath the sharp lines: fatigue, fear, and the quiet panic of someone who had run out of options. 6 empty chairs sat beside her. Chairs meant for her legal team, the most expensive firm in New York. They were supposed to be here. They weren't. Ariana kept checking her phone. Each call went unanswered. Each voicemail returned nothing. With every passing minute, her shoulders sank a little more. All rise. Judge Fisk entered, stern and cold. She took one look at the empty row of chairs and stopped mid-step. "Ms. Lockhart, where is your legal team?" Ariana stood, trying to hold herself together. "Your Honor, I don't know. They were here yesterday. None of them are responding." The prosecutor rose with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Your Honor, the defense has clearly been abandoned. The state moves for a default judgment." A murmur swept across the room. A default judgment meant she would lose instantly. No defense, no chance, no voice. Elliot's fingers tightened around the mop. Something in him snapped, quietly but sharply, like a cord pulled too long. For years he had watched justice twist in this room. For years he had swallowed the memory of the lawyer he once was. A man with a corner office. A man who won cases. A man who believed truth mattered. Judge Fisk inhaled. "Ms. Lockhart, without counsel, the court must—" "I will defend her." The words burst out of Elliot before he could stop himself. The mop slipped from his hand. Every head turned toward the janitor who had just challenged the entire courtroom. Laughter rippled through the courtroom, soft at first, then louder as more people realized what had happened. A janitor had stepped forward to defend a billionaire. Elliot didn't react. His face remained steady, eyes fixed on the judge. The years of humiliation, loss, and silence had carved a quiet strength into him. Mockery couldn't shake that anymore. Judge Fisk studied him with a sharp, suspicious gaze. "Identify yourself," she demanded. Elliot straightened his back. "Elliot Warren, Your Honor." "And what gives you the authority to represent the defendant?" He reached into his worn wallet and pulled out an old license. The plastic edges were scratched. The photo was younger, brighter, untouched by grief. "I was a member of the New York bar for 18 years, he said. A ripple of shock swept the gallery. Even Ariana lifted her head with surprise. Judge Fisk held the card between her fingers, examining it closely. Her expression shifted, doubt softening into reluctant acknowledgement. "Your license is still valid," she murmured. "How long since you last practiced?" 15 years, Elliot said. A low hum of whispers rolled through the courtroom. The judge tapped her gavel once. "Mr. Warren," she said, "do you believe you are competent to proceed?" Elliot didn't look away. "I know the law. I know procedure, and Miss Lockhart deserves a fair defense." For the first time that morning, Ariana met his eyes. What she saw there wasn't desperation. It wasn't ambition. It was sincerity. Quiet, steady sincerity that felt more real than any lawyer she had ever hired. "I accept him, Your Honor," Ariana said. The courtroom reacted instantly. Gasps, murmurs, frantic tapping of reporters' keyboards, but Judge Fisk didn't hesitate. "You have 15 minutes to confer with your client. Then we proceed. No delays." Elliot nodded and stepped toward the defense table, only to be blocked by a security guard. "Only attorneys," the guard said gruffly. Judge Fisk lifted her chin. "He is an attorney." The guard stepped aside awkwardly. Elliot sat beside Ariana. For a moment, neither spoke. They were two strangers sharing a table meant for polished professionals, not for a billionaire and a janitor with a borrowed second chance. Ariana leaned in slightly. "Why did you do that?" she whispered. Elliot kept his voice low. "Because something is wrong here. Very wrong." She looked startled. "What do you mean?" "I've watched trials for 15 years, he said. "Lawyers don't vanish without reason. Not on a case this big. Not without pressure." Her fingers tightened around the edge of the table. "Pressure from who?" "We'll find out," Elliot replied. "But first, I need everything you can tell me. Every detail, no matter how small." Ariana took a breath, shaky, uneven. "Where do I begin?" "Start with your technology," he said. She began talking, fast, words spilling over each other as she tried to compress months of work into minutes. Her breakthrough, her company, the lawsuit, the betrayal, her collapsing world. Elliot didn't write anything down. He absorbed it. The way her voice hesitated at certain names. The way her eyes sharpened when discussing her research. The way her hand trembled when she mentioned losing employees and allies. He wasn't just listening to facts. He was listening to her. A clerk opened the door. "Time's up." Ariana's breath caught. Elliot rose, smoothing the front of his maintenance uniform as if it were a suit. The room waited to see whether he would crumble. He didn't. As he walked toward the podium, every step felt like reclaiming a piece of the man he once was. He faced the jury, lifted his head, and spoke with a voice that belonged to someone who had buried his past, and was now ready to unearth it for the sake of truth. The jurors watched Elliot with a mix of caution and curiosity as he delivered his first questions. It had been 15 years since he last stood at a podium, but the rhythm returned the moment he opened his mouth. His words came sharp, clean, and controlled, like muscle memory waking from a long sleep. By the end of that first afternoon, the courtroom felt different. Reporters typed faster. The prosecutor leaned forward more often. Even the judge stole subtle glances at Elliot, as if trying to reassess the janitor she had nearly dismissed. When court recessed, Ariana gathered her files with shaking hands. She expected Elliot to rush out, but he approached her instead. "We are not done," he said softly. "I need every document related to this case." Ariana blinked. I can bring everything to your apartment." "No," Elliot said quickly. "Not safe. I'll come to your place. After my shift." She stared at him. "You have another job tonight?" "I don't get paid to defend you," he said simply. "If I miss my shift, I lose rent." The words struck her harder than any accusation she'd faced. A key billionaire whose lawyers earned $6,000 an hour was now depending on a man who scrubbed floors for survival. "I'll pay," she began. Elliot cut her off. "I'm not here for money." Something in his tone silenced her completely. Midnight found him standing at the tall gates of Ariana's mansion. The guard eyed his old Toyota with suspicion, but let him in after confirming his name. Elliot stepped out, still in his janitor uniform. The scent of bleach clung to him. Sweat had dried into faint patterns on his shoulders. He hadn't even gone home to change. Inside, Ariana waited in her office, jacket off, exhaustion clinging to her like a second skin. "Coffee?" she asked. He nodded. The cup she handed him smelled richer than anything he'd ever tasted. He set it down. "Tell me the real story," he said. "Not the version shaped for lawyers. The truth." Ariana stared at her hands, then began. She spoke of 12 years of obsession, of tiny apartments, unpaid bills, and endless equations scribbled in notebooks, of professors calling her ideas impossible, of working alone with nothing but stubborn faith. Elliot listened, leaning forward as she unlocked a safe and handed him a folder, the original research notes she'd created years before Nexus Innovations even existed. He flipped through pages of equations, sketches, dates. "This is your proof," he said. "Why didn't your lawyers use it?" "They said it wasn't necessary," Ariana whispered. "They said they had a better strategy." Elliot's jaw tightened. "Ignoring your strongest evidence isn't strategy, it's sabotage." Her face went pale. "You think?" "Yes," he said. "Your team didn't walk away. They were paid to disappear." Ariana looked shattered for a moment, then angry, then lost. The clock ticked past 3 a.m. as they reviewed emails, drafts, schematics, piece by piece uncovering a pattern that didn't feel like coincidence. Missed filings, misplaced documents, wrong objections. Everything pointed to deliberate failure. Ariana rubbed her forehead. "So what now?" "We prepare," Elliot said. "And tomorrow we start turning this around." "But someone did this intentionally," she whispered. "Who would want to destroy me?" Elliot hesitated. "We'll dig, carefully." Then, after a long pause, he added quietly, "And Ariana, whatever happens next, don't react in court, no matter what I ask, no matter what I say." She stared at him. "Why?" "Because someone is watching us," Elliot murmured, "and we need to act like we don't know who." The room felt colder. Neither of them realized it yet, but they were only standing at the edge of something far darker than a lawsuit. And the fall had just begun. The next morning, the courthouse buzzed with a tension that felt sharper than the day before. Cameras were already lined outside the steps. Reporters huddled in groups, whispering about the janitor lawyer, who had unexpectedly revived a dying defense. Elliot kept his head low as he walked through the metal detectors, wearing the thrift store suit he'd pressed the night before. It wasn't new, but it was clean, and today it mattered that he looked like someone the jury could take seriously. Inside, Ariana was waiting at the defense table. Her expression softened when she saw him. "You look different," she said. "Just a suit," he replied. "It's more than that," she whispered. Before he could answer, the bailiff called the room to order. Prosecutor Catherine Morris stepped into the well with a confidence that shimmered like polished steel. She wore a deep red suit, sharp enough to cut. The witness she introduced, Dr. Proyan Bryce, adjusted his glasses as he took the stand, playing the role of a calm academic. For nearly 20 minutes, Morris painted him as the architect behind the quantum breakthrough. She walked the jury through charts, emails, diagrams, every piece carefully curated to make Ariana look like a thief who had stolen brilliance and turned it into profit. Ariana flinched once. Only once. But Elliot noticed. When it was his turn, Elliot stood with a slow, deliberate calm. He carried a slim file. No theatrics, no arrogance. Just a quiet certainty that made the gallery lean forward. "Dr. Bryce," Elliot began, "you testified that you developed the core algorithms from January to March of 2021, correct?" "Yes," Bryce said confidently. Elliot lifted a single sheet. "Could you read your employment start date at Quantum Corp?" The color drained from Bryce's face. "April 21st, 2021. A whisper ran through the gallery like a gust of wind. "So, you created algorithms before you were hired?" Elliot asked softly. Morris objected. The judge overruled. Elliot pressed. "And these server logs," he lifted another page, "show the algorithms were completed more than a month before you joined the company. Care to explain?" Bryce stumbled, muttering half-formed excuses. Sweat beaded along his forehead. Elliot placed the final page on the podium. "Last question. Did you receive a payment of $300,000 from Nexus Innovations 2 weeks before today's testimony?" The courtroom erupted. Morris jumped to her feet. Bryce froze, shoulders collapsing inward. He didn't answer. Not really. He didn't need to. His silence said everything. The judge struck the gavel sharply, but the damage was done. Outside the courthouse, the chaos only grew. Cameras clustered around Elliot and Ariana the second they stepped out. Microphones shoved toward them. Flashes exploded like lightning. Elliot instinctively placed a steady hand on Ariana's back, guiding her through the crowd. "How did you get that payment information?" she whispered once they slipped into a taxi. "I didn't," Elliot said quietly. "I guessed. But once I saw his reaction, Mia confirmed it." Ariana stared at him. "You bluffed." "I followed a hunch," he corrected, and the truth showed itself. The taxi rolled through Queens, slowing near a small cafe where Mia waited inside. Ariana hesitated at the doorway, suddenly aware of how different this world was from hers. Tiny tables, chipped mugs, old posters taped to the walls. When Mia walked in, Elliot stood up so abruptly he almost knocked over his chair. Her hug was quick, awkward, but real. Ariana watched them quietly, feeling something shift inside her. Then Mia opened her laptop, and in minutes she uncovered something darker than either of them expected. Something that tied the lawsuit, the sabotage, and Elliot's ruined past to a single name. Atlantic Energy. The moment that name crossed Mia's screen, the room's air changed, because the conspiracy was no longer just a lawsuit. It was a war, and they had just stepped into the very center of it. The cafe felt too small to contain the weight of the truth Mia had uncovered. Elliot stared at the laptop screen, eyebrows tightening as each new document connected another shadowy thread. Ariana leaned closer, hands trembling slightly, not from fear of losing her company, but from realizing the enemy she was facing was far bigger than she had imagined. "Atlantic Energy," Elliot murmured. 15 years, and they're still doing this." Mia glanced between them. "Dad, they didn't just sabotage your case back then. They've done it over and over. Different victims, different industries, same pattern." Ariana's breath hitched. "So, this lawsuit isn't about me." "It is," Elliot said. "But you're not the only target. You're just the biggest threat." Mia scrolled through more files. "Your energy applications. The projections are terrifying for fossil fuel giants. If your tech works at scale, it could destroy their entire market." Ariana sank back in her chair. For a moment, she looked less like a billionaire and more like a woman who had stumbled into a battlefield she hadn't known she was standing on. "And your old lawyers?" Mia added. "One of their managing partners sits on the board of a subsidiary owned by Atlantic Energy." Ariana shut her eyes. Elliot closed the laptop carefully. "We don't tell anyone else, not yet." "Why?" Ariana asked. "Because information like this doesn't just threaten companies," he said. "It threatens empires." Those words hung in the air. Hours later, that warning became real. Elliot returned home to find his apartment door hanging open, drawers dumped out, mattress slashed. Nothing stolen. There was nothing to steal. But that wasn't the point. They wanted him to know they'd been there. His hands shook as he picked up a torn photo of Mia at age 5. They were sending a message. The next threat came for Mia. Her laptop was hacked, violently, openly. Whoever did it wasn't trying to hide. They wanted her to feel watched. And then came Ariana's attack. A black SUV tore through a red light heading straight for her car. Her driver swerved just in time, crashing into a lamppost instead of a head-on collision. By the time the dust settled, Ariana knew the truth. They weren't trying to win in court. They were trying to erase her. That night, Ariana summoned Elliot and Mia to her mansion. Security guards surrounded the estate. The atmosphere felt like a war bunker. "You're both moving here," Ariana said firmly. "Now." Elliot shook his head. "I won't hide behind wealth." "This isn't about wealth," Ariana snapped. "It's survival." Mia touched his arm gently. "Dad, please." He didn't argue after that. Hours later, they were in the guest house, bigger than anything Elliot had lived in his entire life. Mia explored every corner like a curious child. Elliot stayed still, feeling out of place among the high ceilings and designer furniture. Ariana found him by the window. "You're uncomfortable," she said quietly. "I've lived in small spaces for 15 years, Elliot replied. "This world isn't mine." Ariana stepped beside him. "Maybe it should be." He turned toward her, startled. Her expression wasn't pity. It was respect. Something rare. Something real. Before he could speak, a buzzer rang through the mansion, sharp and urgent. Security rushed inside. "Miss Lockhart," the chief said, voice tight, "someone's at the gate. Someone you know." "Who?" Ariana asked. He hesitated. "Julia Fenwick." Ariana's breath caught. Elliot stiffened. The woman who betrayed her. The woman who copied her files. The woman who gave the enemy everything. And now, she was here, at 2 a.m., shaking, crying, terrified. Elliot exchanged a grim look with Ariana. Something huge, far bigger than the lawsuit, was about to break, and the storm was finally reaching them. Julia stood in the doorway like she had run through a storm. Hair tangled, clothes wrinkled, eyes red and swollen. Ariana didn't move at first. Betrayal still lived in her chest like a bruise. But Julia's voice trembled with something deeper than guilt. "They're going to kill you," she whispered. The room froze. Ariana straightened slowly. "Who?" "Gregory Vance," Julia said, "and the people behind him. They're done waiting for the trial. They want a permanent solution." Her voice cracked. "I couldn't let it happen." She held out a phone, sleek, expensive, and definitely not hers. It was Vance's. Elliot took it carefully as if it were explosive, and, in a way, it was. Inside were messages, emails, recordings, every hidden thread of the conspiracy, enough to destroy an empire. "Why give this to us?" Ariana asked. "Because you trusted me when no one else would," Julia whispered, "and because I'm tired of being their puppet." Before dawn, she disappeared into the night, escorted toward the border with nothing but a second chance and a dangerous secret. At sunrise, Elliot, Mia, and Ariana reviewed the phone's contents. Their blood ran cold as they scrolled through the files. Payments, orders, names, coordinated attacks hidden under layers of corporations. Then the estate alarms shrieked. Security screens lit up with armed men scaling the walls. Tactical gear, military precision. Not thieves, not amateurs. Mercenaries. Maddox, Ariana's security chief, herded them toward the basement. "Safe room, now!" They ran down the hallway as gunfire erupted outside. The steel door slammed shut behind them, sealing them in concrete silence. On the monitors, Maddox and his team fought hard, but the attackers were trained, efficient, relentless. Mia clutched Elliot's arm. "Dad, they're coming for us." Ariana's voice trembled. "Julia told the truth. They want to erase the evidence." A mercenary planted a device on the basement door, a blinking timer. "They're using explosives," Elliot said. 3 minutes, maybe less. He grabbed the emergency phone. 911, Hudson Yards, multiple armed assailants, explosives. We need help immediately. "Units are 2 minutes away," the operator said. 2 minutes felt like an eternity. Ariana reached for Elliot's hand. "If this is it?" "It's not," he said firmly. "We don't end here." The timer flashed faster. Mia's breathing shook. Ariana closed her eyes. Then, suddenly, new images appeared on the screens. Police cars racing through the gates, sirens tearing through the silence. SWAT trucks behind them. More units than anyone expected. The mercenaries saw them too. They fled. Within minutes, the estate was flooded with officers. When the panic room door opened, Elliot stepped out to meet a man wearing an FBI jacket. "Agent Hollister," he introduced himself. "We've been tracking Atlantic Energy for months. Tonight confirmed everything." Ariana's voice rushed out. "Julia, did she make it?" "She's safe," he said, "and she's agreed to testify." By dawn, Vance and several executives were under arrest. Their empire cracked open overnight. The next morning, the courtroom didn't feel hostile. It felt reverent. Prosecutor Catherine Morris stood pale and hollow. "Your Honor, in light of the new evidence, the state moves to dismiss all charges against Miss Lockhart." Judge Rourke nodded. "Motion granted." Ariana turned to Elliot, tears gathering. "We won." "You won," he said softly. "You fought when everything fell apart." Mia threw her arms around both of them. "No, we won." 2 months later, Elliot stood in front of a polished new sign on Fifth Avenue. Warren and Warren Law Civil Rights. Anti-discrimination. Mia stood beside him, law textbook in hand. Ariana approached carrying champagne, smiling in a way that reached her eyes. Inside the empty office, Ariana's voice softened. "You changed my life, Elliot. You gave me my purpose back," he replied. Sunlight streamed across the floor as Ariana reached for his hand. "Different worlds," she whispered, "but maybe the right people." His voice lowered. "Maybe we all deserve a second life." She leaned into him, gentle, certain, and for the first time in 15 years, Elliot allowed himself to hope again. Their story wasn't just survival. It was rebirth,